Welcome back into another episode of George in the Jungle, presented as always by Remington Tavern. Remington Tavern can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. You can check them out on Instagram at Remitav Cincy. That's REMITAV, Cincy with a Y, or follow them on Facebook. And with that, George, we are away. We've seen a flurry of activity thus far in the last week of sports that we have to cover tonight. But I want to start out with your immediate takeaway on the NCAA championship last night that I know you were tuned in for.
Yeah, it was a great game, and I thought Houston was going to pull it off. They had that lead, but
me too.
You're never comfortable. You saw how they came back Saturday on Duke, which was, down the stretch in that game, you had to admire Houston for the defense, the rebounding, and the clutch free throw shooting. Last night, it kind of went the other way for them a little bit, but what a great game. What a great game. And I know, should they have been setting up for this 3 instead of going for 2 on that last play? I don't know. If somebody drains a 3, then we're all saying what a great play call it was. But great defense by Florida on that last play on the perimeter. They got everything they wanted and more. So, yeah, that was a fun game. This makes no sense because the game Saturday was great. The game last night was great. But the tournament overall to me just was not as great as usual. And that's just because, it was just kind of number one seed advances. And I just hope that's not what it's going to become, but I'm afraid it is.
Yeah, I think that the days of the Cinderella going to the Final Four or the championship, those days might be behind us. We'll see.
Yeah, it's a shame because it's kind of what makes the tournament special. And, there was usually one every year sneaking into the Elite Eight, and it's just not happening this year. And I think that's because money.
I forget which coach it was, but I saw a coach somewhere saying that they should be getting buyouts for the guys that from mid-major programs that are going to these major programs in the new free agency. As it is.
Nuts. Yeah, I understand where he's coming from because you're serving as a minor league now.
You're developing the talent. Yeah.
It's insane to me. And like I told you last week, I know a coach who that's what he sells he has no NIL money. So he just tells his people like, hey, this is where you fit. You're going to get a lot of playing time. And then if you have offers at the end of the season, there's the door. You're more than welcome to go get that money. I want you to get it. And that's what this dude sells. And in that aspect, it kind of works for some of these kids. But what's it do for these programs? Okay, I'm sitting here right now, and we'll get to this. I'm getting ahead of myself. But, it's season ticket renewal time for everybody. And here's the UC basketball roster right now that I have. There it is, basically. A blank sheet of paper. There's 4 or 5 guys, but it's a joke. And you're asking me not only for money, then you're asking for donor money. It's absurd. And they're killing the golden goose. If they don't get a handle on this system, they're killing the goose.
Well, let's get into who has entered the portal thus far. You saw yesterday Josh Reed maybe being the biggest surprise on the list. You saw Dan Skillings. We've seen
Rayvon.
Rayvon yesterday, and then today you saw Arrington Page. You saw Tyler Betsy, and you saw Dylan Mitchell. Rayvon and Dylan Mitchell have left it, and I guess Tyler Betsy as well, have all left it open for return if they don't like what they see out of the portal. I am curious to see how open that return could be. I don't know that we'll see any of those guys back, if I'm being honest. But All 6 of those guys are in the portal. Again, I think Josh Reed is probably the only big surprise there. But what were your initial thoughts on any and all of those guys?
Well, most of them I expected. I didn't expect Rayvon so much, but I get it in his instance because I don't know how much playing time he's going to get here. We shall see, but it hasn't worked out so far for him for whatever reason. And there's a couple things obviously he needs to work on, and something that probably didn't get talked about a lot, but not the least of which is the outside shooting because he's still got that weird rotation on it. Dylan Mitchell, not a surprise to me that he would test the waters and all that, but that may be one of the guys you're talking about. Are they welcome back? Because whereas I like him as a player and the athletic talent, but my God, the free throw shooting and that kind of stuff, it's just unacceptable. It's unacceptable at this level. It really is. And if that doesn't get fixed, I don't have a problem. Obviously, it depends on who they bring in behind him and all of that. But all you can do is trust that somebody competent will come in to take that spot. But I don't know. I don't know. Betsy's not a big surprise to me to check it out. Unlike some people, I thought his defense was getting a little better as the season went on. In fact, I thought about halfway through the season, I noticed a bit of a difference in him. Probably didn't shoot it as well as advertised or what people were expecting, but he's a freshman. He's getting his first taste of it. And those guys can take a pretty decent jump year 1 to year 2 and a great jump year 2 to year 3 if they stay in programs long enough. And that's another problem with this system. A lot of these kids are not going to develop the way they would have under the old rules. And I'm not saying – the old rules were 100% right where a kid transferred and had to sit out a year. A lot of times that was unjustified, but they got a lot of development out of that, staying in the same program and getting some of the same coaching. And a lot of these kids are not going to become the players that they would have in the old system. Who else went yesterday? Skillings was not a shock at all. It may be more of a shock, some of the names of the schools I've seen interested, but I get it. There's a lot of raw talent there. And if you can harness it and get him focused and full core, full bore basketball again, maybe it works out. But he certainly regressed from year 2 to year 3. So I'm not shocked by any of this. And you know what? Everybody, Jizzle and Day could join him tomorrow, and I would not be shocked because it is nothing but the wild, wild west with hired guns right now. That's all it is. And it's like someone getting in their ear saying, well, you'll make double over here, or, you'll make – of course they're going to listen. And, of course, it's going to be tempting. And if I were 20 years old, I would be following that river too. And that's why, it's up to the adults in college basketball to figure this thing out and right the ship, because I don't think this is helping the kids much at all, except their bank account. And then who knows how long that money's in there, given things young people do with money.
Well, 2 new additions after all of that. 2 new additions, guys that you can expect to see, at least at this point. All signs are pointing to Kirk Risa and Sincere Harris joining the Cincinnati Bearcats next season. Kirk Risa comes here. He started his career at Arizona before going on to West Virginia, then to Kentucky, and now will be joining Cincinnati. Then Sincere Harris was with West Virginia just last season. And you got 2 players who have been in the Big 12. They know this conference and have seen the ins and outs of this conference. But what are your thoughts there, George?
Well, good toughness on both of those guys. And
Agreed.
And when Kreese is on, he's incredible, and not just as a shooter, but passing the ball and just his toughness and his ability to get under people's skin, I think is good for a team. The other kid the same way, and he was a highly recruited kid out of Canton. He's got everything but the shooting, and that's a bit of a fear factor for me, but if it's a trade-off for toughness and defense, especially, in areas where they lacked it this year, I'm all for it. And we'll see how much each of these guys are going to play each game. Are they the frontline portal guys that you want to bring in? Probably not, but I think they're good additions. They're solid on the end of the floor where UC desperately needed to get better at out on the perimeter guarding. But the shooting, one's got it, one doesn't. We'll see. It's going to be a mix and match for the coaching staff, and I hope they're up to it. But I'm not disappointed in these two coming to UC.
I was probably more concerned about Sincere Harris before Josh Reed entered the portal. Josh Reed seemed almost like an overlap of similar styles of play, and I didn't know how you were going to get both of those guys on the floor at the same time if it wasn't solely just a one defensive possession and then a timeout to bring in some offensive players.
Right.
But I feel probably a little more settled on it with Josh Reed entering the portal, so I guess we'll see what happens with that. Kirk Risa, though, we talked all season about needing to have a dog mentality on this team. Guys didn't have the I don't want to lose type of attitude on the floor.
Right.
And Kirk Risa immediately brings that to the floor. You also have a guy in him. This is his sixth season, going into his sixth season. He is very familiar with the college game at this point. He has gone nose to nose, literally, with Luka Doncic.
Right. Yeah.
I'm very interested to see what he brings. I feel like when we talk about you need to have that Bearcat attitude, that's what you're talking about is
Correct.
Who he is on the floor. And it's been quite a while since we've had a guy who gets under someone's skin the way that he does regularly.
Yeah, and I think that you kind of get some of that in Harris too. I mean, it is kind of like throwback kind of players for UC. The one shoots better. Risa shoots better than Harris, obviously, and that's. But they'll find ways to work him in. I hope. It just depends on what the rest of this roster is going to look like too, Aaron. I mean, who knows? I know they probably have their wish list and all that, but how much of that are you going to be able to accomplish with the way all these guys are ping-ponging around and money being such a factor? I hate to say, I mean, it's just a hot mess. It really is.
Well, right now you've got at guard, Kirk Risa, Day-Day, Jizzle, Keyshawn Tillery, and maybe Connor Hickman. Sincere Harris kind of play that two guard or three forward. Then Sean Abayev, of course, who can do essentially the same thing as far as running the two or the three,
Right.
I would think. Then you've got Tyler McKinley there at the 4 spot, maybe a sub 5. And Halvin Zella, we'll see what happens with him. He has not yet announced that he'll be entering the portal, but you've got to figure out what the hell you're going to do with the big position, because you've got plenty of minutes right now at that 4 and 5, and potentially even some 3 minutes.
You're right.
Lots of backcourt. I'm very concerned as you're starting to see guys figuring out where they're going to land. The tournament is officially over as of last night. The dead period is over as well. I'm very concerned right now until I see somebody announcing, "Hey, I'm coming to Cincinnati" at that 4 spot, 5 spot, and you've got a couple guys you need to slot in both those spots. So.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it's a huge concern, and again, I don't think, you see obviously with the new GM and Wes, and they probably have good ideas on who they want to bring in, but you got to lock them down, and are they going to be able to do that? And that's kind of out of their hands unless you have an unlimited budget anymore. I mean, we're seeing guys popping all over the place, and it's not just programs like UC, it's programs that have won national championships in the last 10 years. And they're seeing an exodus and guys, crapping on them out the door to go play for someone else. It's crazy.
Yeah. You also have an assistant coach spot open with Drew Adams taking off for IU. I'm obviously curious to see who they fill in that position with, as that's going to be somebody else who could potentially have some connections to bring some more additions to this roster as well. So I think that you've got to figure that out rather quickly. I would imagine.
You would think. You would think. I mean, it's just, you think about all the balls in the air on the team and, season ticket renewals and people looking at that. And it's just, I'm not happy. I'll just put it that way. I'm not happy with the whole thing. I'm not. I mean, I like watching kids develop. I like watching kids grow in a program, and it's spoiling a lot of it for me. I know I expressed that last week, and I was hoping, some developments might make me feel a little different, but I feel worse now than I did a week ago. And I think I have every right to, because it's such a freaking mess.
Well,
I mean, where's that going to go? Like, how are you asking people, you buy season tickets, then people give the UCATs or NIL, and then it's like, yeah, okay, but if you want to win, you got to donate more. And it's like, I'm not getting any more out of this by donating more. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I might get an autographed ball or something, but I'm seeing the same amount of games. I'm paying the same amount for my tickets. It's like, what the hell? When does it end?
Not until these guys are actually employees of the university.
Yeah, they've got to get this.
There's collective bargaining.
Out. This is crazy, and I can't imagine any coach is happy with this. I don't care where you're at. You got to be like, this sucks, and you got to know it sucks.
Well, especially at the mid-major level, because any guy that you do develop is getting plucked and going somewhere else to make more money. And
right.
Rinse, wash, repeat.
Yeah. Well, like I said it's worse than Major League Baseball system. At least there, you got control of guys for 5-6 years when they come up. You've got multi-year contracts. I mean, this fielding a whole new team every year is just not doing it for me.
Well, I'm going to play the devil's advocate and say that after what we saw, bringing back as many guys as we retained last season and going into this season that just ended, I was not happy with the product that we had. 16 losses is a lot to swallow, and I am not upset at all with the way that this reset is going. And I'm curious.
I guess if there was ever a good time for UC, it's after this year.
I'm cautiously optimistic that they'll be able to slot in some guys at that 4 and 5 position and make me feel better about this roster. Dylan Mitchell, I know a lot of people were, I don't know, upset's the right word. I think a lot of people wanted him to be back. If you were bringing back guys, I think him and probably him, Jizzle, and Day-Day, I think were your top 3 guys in no particular order that people wanted to bring back. I'm of the belief that it's hard for me to think that bringing back both Day-Day and Jizzle is an improvement, or I don't know. We'll see. I'm a little nervous about bringing both of them back. I thought maybe you could go one or the other, but we'll see. We haven't seen anything as far as the portal goes with either of those guys. As far as Dylan goes, I'm not upset. Like I enjoyed watching him dunk, but if you're going to run an offense the way, or a team really the way that we've ran this team this past season, if the offense and defense is going to look about the same as what you had this year, you need a guy who can defend like Dylan, but also shoot. And if you're not able to do anything outside the paint at that 4 spot, it creates a bit of a slog, especially if you have a center also who is kind of doing the same thing.
Right, and that's where they really got caught short this year, because the 1, 2, and 3 was not given the offensive production outside that this coaching staff or myself expected. They weren't, and you thought they would get that, and you would have a couple of guys that are pretty good at cleaning stuff up. Certainly Mitchell is at crashing the board and getting the stick back and that kind of. It seemed like a perfect fit at the time, and then when all 3 of your options outside are struggling the way they did, and it seemed like they struggled all at the same time for a while there, you're screwed. and UC was, and that's how you end up with 16 losses. I mean, it's so I'm not as upset as some people with Dylan leaving for that reason. That I mean, there's kind of one way he scores in there, unless it's an alley oop, and they need more options than that. Maybe they'll have him next year. Maybe Abeyev and whoever else, Krisa, whoever can pick that up, and maybe he would be a fit on a roster that does that, but I'm not sure. And I'm just let's put it this way: at the end of that UCF game, and I'm sure every fan was the same way, I didn't give a damn who came back. If they all left, if they all raised their hand that night and said, I'm out of here, I would have shuttled them over to the airport for free.
That's kind of where I was at, and I don't know that it's really changed for me. So I'm not at all really upset with where this thing's gone thus far. And
yeah, I know. I'm just looking at the big picture of college basketball as a whole, and it's like it's a mess, and it's frustrating. And then as someone who does buy season tickets, and it's like, and when this portal thing started, I'm like, okay, well, maybe name coaches aren't going to be all that impactful because it's going to be more about the money and all that. But now I'm seeing, if you've got a proven coach in April and not a lot of players, you can still believe it's going to come together. I'm not at the point this April that I believe it's going to come together, no matter who walks into that locker room, because I'm not sure this coaching staff is going to coach them up and get it done.
Well, that's an entirely different conversation, and one that I hope we don't have to have after.
Right. I mean, it's definitely a make it or break it year. And in my book, I mean, kind of this year was, but when you look at that buyout, I understand all that. But to me, it was a miserable fail from that standpoint. I'm sorry it was. We'll see where it goes next year, but it's got to be better. And if it's not, I mean, and unfortunately, he may be dealt a bad hand with players. We'll see. You have no control over who the hell's coming in unless you have an unlimited budget, and they don't.
Well, the players have been his players, so I don't know. I don't know that you can call it a bad hand that you're dealt with players. Being that
last year wasn't. This year could be just because of who you end up. I don't know. I mean, I just it's. But you're right. He picks the players. That's something. There was a cantankerous coach at UC that used to complain about how stupid his players were. And we would ask him, well, who brought him in? He didn't like that.
Well, I guess the only excuse you could potentially have as far as the hand you're dealt going forward, I wouldn't imagine this roster necessarily, because Corey Evans is so new to the job of GM. But going forward, it very well may be the GM brought these guys in, and the coaches had to coach them. So we'll see how that position evolves. Corey Evans, of course, will be on tomorrow night, barring anything crazy, with Chad and Dave on the BCJ pod. So hop back on to this very channel tomorrow night at 8, and you'll get to hear from the GM, Corey Evans.
Yeah, hopefully he'll alleviate some concerns. I'm looking forward to that because I've got a lot of concerns.
Yeah, I hear you, George. That all said, were you able to catch any UC baseball this weekend?
Actually, I was. I watched a lot of the first game Sunday, which was unbelievable. Great pitching performance. You got a kid in college throwing 116 pitches, I think it was, for a complete game. Maybe the major leagues could take a little notice of that. Although Francona did last night, but Hunter Green was being very efficient. But yes, the baseball team taking 2 out of 3 there. Now even on the season in conference play, still early, 6-6, I think, is what I saw. I think they were losing to Wright State tonight, but these midweek games, I mean, you just got to get through those. You're not pitching your best pitchers and all that. So those can always go either way. But certainly excited about what's coming up ahead, with Arizona State coming in this weekend.
Yeah, they are currently losing to my alma mater, actually. Wright State 9-3, last I saw. So
the Raiders haven't been a bad baseball program overall, am I right?
No.
I mean, they've had some pretty good players.
Yeah. There was a guy who played for Tampa, first base. that came out of the Wright State system for a
And
long
Joe
time.
Smith, who pitched for quite a
Yeah.
while in the majors.
Yep. But in any case, good to see the baseball team continuing to find wins. 2 out of 3, anytime you're in Big 12 play is well done.
How much do we need to worry about NIL in baseball?
I think you're going to figure out, you got to get through one season of revenue share with football and basketball before you're worried about baseball. And that sucks to say.
I know.
It sucks to put it that way because obviously, Bishop's putting together a pretty good program here at Cincinnati, and he's fighting an uphill battle and is going to continue to fight that uphill battle because, truthfully, I mean, football brings in the money, and basketball is where the heartbeat of this sports program starts and ends. So we'll see. It's not an easy thing to be a baseball coach.
No, and I hope I'm sure they're taking good care of their baseball coach, and I hope it doesn't roll downhill in a hurry, but it probably will because it certainly consumed the other 2 sports in a hurry. But I hope it doesn't come to that for them, and I hope he continues coaching in more of what would be considered a northern part of the power baseball structure, because he's done very well with it, coaching at these so-called northern baseball schools.
Yeah, well, in any case, speaking of baseball, Cincinnati Reds made a bunch of moves today. Some much needed moves. Maybe a day or 2, 3 late.
Probably in retrospect.
They did place Matt McClain on the IL retro to April 5th. They optioned Carson Spires to AAA and recalled from AAA Will Benson, who may have one of the hottest bats in all of baseball right now, and Noel Marte.
Yeah, who was hitting the ball well.
He was hitting the ball well, which that was one of the things that everybody was concerned with, is because he had his shot at the bigs at the end of last season and didn't do much of anything with it. Starts the season in AAA, and he's hitting the ball well. And, of course, this all comes after his suspension for, 90 games or whatever it is, 80 games.
80, yeah.
For testing positive for PEDs. So good on him for getting things right. I'm, of course, very publicly a Will Benson stan. I'm happy to see him get a shot after tearing it up down in Louisville. What are your thoughts on bringing these guys up?
Well, given that the Reds have like 7 guys hitting under 200 right now, and I know it's still relatively early, but, time's a wasting. These games count too. So I'm glad they're doing this. I'm guessing with Spires going down, maybe Abbott's going to be ready. I know they said, hell, it might be tonight, he was going to throw like a simulated game or get in some work at Louisville, and then hopefully – can join the Reds at the end of the rotation. I hope that's what this means, that he's just about ready to go, and we'll be back up here soon. I would think sending Spires down means, they got to bring somebody up, and I'm guessing that will be Abbott. And then Benson and Marte, yeah, you got to ride those hot bats and get them up here, especially when other guys are struggling, other guys are wounded. Matt McClain hopefully can kick this injury bug, because I'm starting to become very concerned about that. It's just, bad luck, whatever. You chalk it up to whatever you want. But he's out again, and that's problematic because he's terrific when he's with the team and healthy. Yep. Austin Hayes should be back soon. Hopefully he's able to provide some help. And then, like I mean, Diaz joining the rotate, or Diaz coming back for the bullpen, perhaps, and we'll see how much that helps and how much Tito puts in him. But he may be back before long, maybe during the next series or 2. And then Tyler Stevenson's still out for a while, with Stevenson out and Hayes out and McClain out, that hurts your offense, man. Those are some bats you're kind of banking on to help carry the load, and they don't have them.
Well, you also have Spencer Steer, who still can't play a position currently. He's only available for
Yeah, I heard
DH.
some interesting stuff about him and the injury, like that. It's an impingement where they can't operate on it, like surgery. It's not. I've never heard of that. Where I mean, you can replace a whole shoulder now, right? But that's probably not recommended for a baseball player. But you would think there's some way to fix that with surgery, but I guess not. And like I was told, he's like relearning kind of a different way of throwing, so he will be able to play the field. That's been a big issue. And that sounds crazy to me, but that's what I was hearing. And when you look at him and, not playing the field and not hitting on it, kind of makes sense that something is going on. Who knows when he'll be right again, but it's got to be scary for him that it's something they can't fix. And you got to learn, not only how to throw again, but also apparently how to hit again too, because I don't know what he's hitting now, but it's not very good. I mean, it's down around the low hundreds, I believe, and still early, but it's very concerning because that's a guy you're banking on. That's a guy like an Ellie or a McLean that, a young up and comer that you're thinking can make this team a playoff contender. And right now it doesn't look like he's going to be helped anytime soon. And that's a shame.
Yeah, right now he's batting 111. Last night he was 1 of 3 with a run scored and a walk. So he's, I guess, getting things right. I don't know.
I love the kid. I think he's a hard player, a hard worker, and he's just kind of one of those guys that can do everything pretty well when healthy. And so I hope they figure this thing out for him. I really do. Not just for the team, but for him. That's just scary stuff.
You mentioned, all these guys hitting below 200. Some of the bigger question marks right now might actually be Jeimer Candelario. What's going on with him? Because whatever he's doing at the plate, he's also not really bringing you much in the field. And Jake Fraley's just been a mess of a player this entire season. A mess.
He's playing himself out of a spot on the team the way he's going in that area.
Out of the bigs.
Yeah.
Out of the bigs.
Right. Exactly. And you know what? Like if Austin Hayes were ready to go right now, they would I wonder what they would do. Would they put Steer on the IL or would they I don't know. But his spot is not secure right now, in my book.
I wouldn't think right now either move would be bad. Whether it's, I don't know if Fraley has any options left, but I don't know if it's DFA Fraley and hope that the White Sox or somebody else picks up his contract or what you do. But he is a liability everywhere right now. And you have to think, you have to wonder if his scratch last night from the lineup was him actually, needing the night off or if it was maybe something else.
Well, we'll probably find out soon enough. I do wish they'd made these moves a couple games sooner, but at least they're not. Last year, some of this stuff lingered for a couple weeks before they put guys on the IL and stuff. So at least it seems like there's a little more proactivity now than what we had. We'll see, but to me, you just don't mess around with that stuff. If you got options like Benson and Marte who were performing well and doing well at Louisville, and you've got guys hurting, it's not like the old days where, you're out the whole 15 games or 15 days. You got a shorter time period now. So it makes all the sense in the world if Matt McLean does have, a hamstring issue. Those things, if you don't take care of it right away, that can knock you out for a long time.
Yeah. Right now, the Reds sit at 4-7 after the win last night. Hunter Green pitched a gem.
Green. Yeah.
He pitched a gem. First, I want to start off with this whole glove incident. Apparently, he has his initials on his glove and he has his number on his glove, and it's on the webbing of the pocket. And he has a logo for his initials, I guess. He's made it into a logo, and his number is just, it's not just 21 on there. It's kind of in a font of sorts. But apparently, I guess what I'm hearing is the Giants complained that his logo looked like a swastika. I
Is
don't.
that what they said?
That's what I read somewhere. I don't know. I don't
I
know
know
that
he
that's
was annoyed as all get out. He
well,
was
and
annoyed as all get out.
because he's worn this logo on his glove for this is the second year. This isn't a new
Exactly.
thing. What are we doing?
I don't know. I don't know how that happens. It's crazy. I'm gonna have to catch up. I'm gonna have to read up more on it because it's nuts. Like, yes, he said I've been using this thing for 2 seasons now, and nobody said a word, and now it's a thing. And maybe that teed him off a little bit, and he bore down because he was sure nails last night. And he goes into the ninth inning, 80 some pitches, right?
Mhm.
And then he throws pitch 89, and Sadek has to say it. And there's one out. Well, the Reds haven't had a guy throw a complete game shutout under 100 pitches since Bronson Arroyo in 2011.
Oh,
There it
John.
is. It's gone.
John. Oh, John.
I was hoping it wouldn't, but it did. And then, oh my God. But what a gem. I mean, that was one of the better pitched Reds games I've seen in a long time. And
he was still hitting 100, George. He was still hitting 100 in the ninth.
I know. It's crazy. He's and he throws so smooth. I mean, it's not you would think that's taxing on everything, but he's just so smooth doing it. I mean, he brings that sweet heat, and I'm telling you, they're starting to reap the benefits for that pick. The second overall pick is starting to play like the second overall pick. And if Nick Lodolo can follow that up tonight with the way he's been throwing, and that dude's got to stay healthy. We all know it. But when he does, he's just as in control and dominant at times. That's a hell of a 1-2 punch. I'm really encouraged by this team because of their starting pitching. And overall, the pitching hasn't been horrible. I think Tito knows not to bring in Jabot sometimes when it's a tight situation. But overall, they've done a good job on that part of it. I think the pitching has held up very well.
I agree as far as the pitching goes. I need to see the bats come alive more than just one game, 14 runs.
God, yes.
You've got to be able to do more than.
Well, how do you score 14 and then turn around and lose 3 straight 1-0?
I don't have an answer for that.
Boggling. It's baseball's such a weird game, and hopefully they're just going through it early. But you can't rely on that. Maybe this is who they are. I hope not. I think CES has a lot more in him than what he's shown so far. I mean, that bomb he hit the other night. Yes, there we go, baby. I hope you can wear that proudly this summer, because when he ties into it, holy God, that's like Ellie type power when he squares it up.
Yeah, he's another one that's got to figure it out, and this is only his second season, so he's got plenty of time to do so. But you'd rather see that sooner than later, as somebody has to get hot.
Hopefully they all do. I just hope it doesn't all. What they score the other night? 11 was that Saturday? I guess it was.
Yeah, 11-7.
Then they're scratching around Sunday, can't do anything. I'll just say it. I mean, I don't have anything against the Brewers really, like some people, but I hate when they have to play in Milwaukee because they just get boat raced.
They've got our number for sure.
Yep,
they've got our number,
no doubt about it, and that's been going on. There was a year, I'm going to say it's about 3-4 years ago, the Reds swept the Brewers, I believe, going into the All-Star break. And then that was a quirky schedule, and they had to play the Brewers coming out of the break too, and they went to Milwaukee, and then they got swept there. They have not done crap against the Brewers since then. They have not. That jinxed them. I don't know what it is, but the Brewers have flat out owned them. And that's when I said on the air that the Reds are the better team and the Brewers know it. So they better be scared when the Reds go up to Milwaukee, and then they crushed them like a grape.
Way to go,
That might be
George.
the last
Your
time I
fault.
opened my mouth like that on television.
All your fault. Maybe that's
Mhm.
why they took you off TV, right?
Yeah, they should have kicked me out years ago, like after the 92 Final Four for UC, because there wasn't
Oh,
shit happened until the Super Bowl run by the Bengals in that time period.
well, you bring up the Bengals, and that's our next topic here to get to. Actually, we'll get to this question here before we get to the Bengals. Drew asked, he said he was late to the pod, but do we think the Reds can turn it around? No, it's a long season, but it's looking bleak.
It's looking
My
bleak.
my take is we're 4-7. It is 11 games in. There are 162. We are not even 10% through this entire season. You're playing at Great American Ballpark for half of your games, and it is still cold. The ball does not carry yet. There's plenty to change between now and the trade deadline, between now and summer, when the air quality changes in Cincinnati and the ball carries a little bit more. I don't think anything that you're seeing right now is going to resemble what it looks like come June, and I hope that it's for the better.
Yeah, it's still very early. Even and I hate saying that because I say it every year with them. And at the end of April, it'll still be early, but yeah, they got to start showing some signs of life. You don't want to wait too long, and you want guys to get rolling, get confident. It's not too early to write it off, but I understand anyone being a little concerned. But I think they'll get it going here, and I still expect them to be very competitive. And quite honestly, I know Kyle Tucker's got it going up there in Chicago, but I expect the Reds to be able to be right in the mix with whoever the hell's at the top of this division. And even though they just spit the bit against the Brewers, I don't know what's going on with the Brewers and why the Reds can't beat them. But yeah, it's too early to jump off any bandwagons. But just based on history, you can be concerned a little bit. But yeah, there's plenty of time.
You're not 3-23 yet. When you're 3-23, then
Right.
it's time to be very concerned.
Oh my God, remember
And
that?
and truthfully, George, if it was the pitching that was the issue, I'd be far more concerned. But
Yes, I
I
agree.
think batting is something that can turn around. Runs can turn around far quicker than repairing a decimated starting five or a bullpen. And right
Yeah,
now,
and what's good about that for the Reds this year too with the pitching is they got a little more depth too, and
sure,
hopefully Rhett Lauder is on target to return in a timely fashion. Should he be needed? Chase Burns is already looking. He's turning some heads already, and
Wade Miley.
he's probably a little ways away, but that depending on injuries and stuff, that timetable can be turned up a little bit. We shall see. But they've got some talent, and Abbott coming back. They've got a little more depth than what they've had in recent years on the mound.
Even with the bullpen, you got Maxwell down there. There was the other kid who was hitting like 102 or something. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But they've got some options for bullpen help if need be. You just don't want to necessarily start burning those options quite yet.
Yeah, hopefully they don't have to, but yeah, I do agree with your assessment that if it was the pitching blowing up and you felt like there was a lack of, that's going to burn you all season. I think the hitting can come alive, and it should come alive. Like some of these guys that aren't hitting, and you mentioned Candelario, and God, he was kind of streaky last year though, and that doesn't help sometimes, especially when a team's going through this. You want consistent guys. I hope he's not just turned into a streaky dude that is not going to help them this year unless he's red hot. That all or nothing stuff, it doesn't work.
Well, there's plenty of time to find out, and we will continue talking about that for months to come. But getting to some Bengals news, Trey Hendrickson, he made the quick circuit, I guess, through some different talk shows and what have you. After we talked about just last week, it became national news after we talked about it last week. We caught it on the early end of the news cycle, but Katie Blackburn had some comments about the negotiations with Trey Hendrickson. Some people thought it was April Fool's, Trey Hendrickson included, thought it was an April Fool's joke. He goes on Pat McAfee and talks about his ongoing situation. At the end of the day, in my opinion, you signed a contract extension. Was it under the guise potentially of maybe working out another extension before that contract was up? Potentially. I don't know how that conversation went, but you did have the front office talking about at different points during this offseason already that they're going to work on getting you a new deal. So you've got to figure out, is it just lip service, or are they actually going to do the thing? Are they looking to trade you as you've been granted the opportunity to try and search out a trade? Hasn't been fruitful to this point, but the draft is coming up and you can sometimes get some trade value during the draft that you weren't able to get maybe earlier in the offseason. I don't know. Right now, it just seems kind of messy, and it just seems like the guy wants to be here, genuinely.
It is messy. And I think if they're offering, what are we talking about, 30 or low 30s, whatever, because he said on the McAfee show, he's not looking to be the highest. He's not asking for Myles Garrett money.
Just wants a last contract.
He's going to have a problem, if the Bengals are at that 30 million or 31, whatever threshold. He's going to have trouble finding a team who is going to trade assets and pay him that much. At the same time, I feel for him because in that interview with McAfee, he said he hasn't really heard boo from the front office, and they were trying to have this open dialogue. Right. And then she says what she does to the media that he doesn't even know it's coming and thought it was an April Fool's joke. He's got a point. That's not how you do these things, and that's not how you foster goodwill with someone when you're out there. I found it very surprising that Katie would do that. She's usually much more reserved. So I don't know, maybe there was some purpose to that, hoping to get him to budge a little, but I don't think it worked. I think he might dig in his heels a little bit now. But, hopefully they find some happy medium and get it worked out because, my God, Aaron, think about them losing him, okay? And then going in and, now you've lost him and Hubbard. And I know Sam was not himself last year, but still, that defense is in trouble the way it is in my book. I'm thinking that defense is going to have a hard time holding up this year, just like it did last year. And you take him out of the equation, I'm not thrilled.
I would be surprised if even after the draft, if you don't see, probably. I don't know that they're necessarily starters, but I would think that you'd have some impact signings, still maybe 2-3 impact signings after the draft. So I don't know. That said, whatever you do with Trey Hendrickson, it's not going to be the same defense without him. I'm with you there. No. So I think that as buttoned up as this front office tends to be with all things regarding contracts and all of that, they've been, I don't know that sloppy is quite the word I want to use, but they've been not themselves. This front office has not been themselves this offseason to what I'm accustomed to. And
yeah, no, you're right.
I don't think it's good. I've not enjoyed the way that it's been. I feel like they've put the cart before the horse in a lot of the things that they've said openly to the media, whether you're talking about the Blackburns or whether you're talking about Zach's been pretty buttoned up, but I don't know. They've just been out of character.
Zach does a great job. He doesn't make very few mistakes he makes. He made one a while back when he mentioned, God, I remember after practice, he said something one day, and then he kind of, forget if it was about an injury, something with a player.
It was about Jamar Chase, where he was essentially
Yeah,
saying
that's right. It was Jamar. That was
he
a
was going to be
rare
playing.
unforced error from
Yeah.
Zach, because he doesn't do that. But you know, Katie said that about Trey, and there's probably some ulterior motive there for the front office to try to get him to move or something. But if you back this up and think about taking care of Chase a year ago, what would that have saved them? Now, he probably would have wanted to renegotiate that in a couple years, and they know that. But still, they could have avoided all this song and dance and the big kabuki dance of this offseason with both wide receivers and all that stuff. And then they paid through the nose for everyone pretty much. Now it's happening with Trey Hendrickson, which last year when he requested that trade, I mean, I understand honoring contracts, but also it's the NFL and it's a competitive business. And there are other options for these players when they play out these deals. And there's something to be said about a guy who racks up the sacks he does and keeping him happy, especially on a defense that doesn't have a lot of stars or producers like that. That's something they probably should have gotten handled last year when this flared up. I don't know what their aversion is to that, but they certainly have it. They got it done with the receivers. We'll see what they do with Trey, but the other thing that happened with them this week, and Katie was in this up to her neck, was the New York Times thing with moving the team.
So
I mean, there's so much going on.
I'm glad you bring that up because that was the next topic I wanted to get to. We talked earlier that this has been some weeks now since we discussed this, but if they want to look into potentially moving this team, they have to announce it for sale. Six months prior to moving the team, they have to try and sell the team to keep it in the city before they do this. That all also gets maybe a little hairy with what came out today, as you have a bill being introduced by an Ohio lawmaker to prevent state dollars from going to sports teams with losing records. The bill would require teams to have winning records for 3 of 5 past seasons to get taxpayer money, which you now are looking at. That could affect the Browns, that could affect the Bengals, that could affect the Reds, that could affect the Indians, that could affect the Columbus Crew, that could affect the Columbus Blue Jackets, that could affect the FC Cincinnati. There's a lot of teams that could be affected by this.
Absolutely.
And I am fascinated to see where this goes.
That is going to be interesting to see. I don't. Well, you know how it is. I mean, certainly the outlook of supporting these professional teams in a big way, that does not sit well with taxpayers anymore, especially with what happened in Hamilton County.
Well, it doesn't sit. It's an even tougher pill to swallow when it doesn't feel, as a fan of the team, that the teams are putting winning products out there as opposed to just milking the cash cow.
Right, which is kind of how it felt in the 90s when the Bengals went through this. And, you know, it probably helped push that along, that the Cleveland thing was blowing up.
George, it felt like that just recently when Phil Castellini opened his mouth and said, where are you going to go?
Right. I agree. But you know as well as I do, if the Bengals do want to move, there's going to be plenty of places they can go. There's not going to be any lack of interest in acquiring an NFL team for your city, or as Florio floated the other day, maybe Chicago would add another team, and then that would justify spending money on a big new stadium that they both share, like the Chargers and Rams do in LA.
Number one, anytime Florio opens his mouth, I am immediately going with whatever is the opposite of what he has to say. Because
I said the same thing when I was made aware of this.
I think he's
throwing more.
He's an idiot.
Hoping it sticks.
He's an idiot.
That certainly doesn't think much of Cincinnati.
I'd be shocked if that team left the city. If there was any other team without the lore of Paul Brown, that is still his ghost is still walking through that stadium. You know that.
Right.
He would be rolling in his grave. That team left the city of Cincinnati. So whether they move off the river and end up in one of the neighboring counties, I'm not ruling that out. But for them to leave Cincinnati, I would be shocked. Even truthfully, I mean, even if they left the banks of the Ohio River, I think I'd still be shocked.
Yeah, I would too. I don't think it's a real possibility. They're certainly going to leverage all they can. It's going to be very interesting. It already is. But if they move the Mason, then you can blow up Paycor and build your damn arena there. But I don't know where any of that money's coming from. So that's more ridiculous than what Florio said. But I we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of posturing going on, but I don't know how they're going to fund all this stuff. I mean, it's going to have to be a regional effort. And I don't know. I've seen this so many times, and a lot of teams have moved, but I don't expect the Bengals have like some serious roots in Ohio and serious roots in Cincinnati now. I mean, you're talking, Katie grew up here. Everyone, Mike's been here since '68. There's serious roots here, and
Right.
Katie's children grew up here, and they're involved in the franchise now. They went to school here. They have friends here. I genuinely believe they like it here a lot, and it's actually. I feel like this area is very friendly to its teams. Now, I'm not saying they just shovel taxpayer money to them, but I'm just saying like the media is fairly friendly. You don't get treated like you do in Philly or some other spots, New York. You
Chicago.
just what's that?
Chicago. They would not. They don't.
Oh no, they'd go crazy. And to move them there, you already got so many Bears. I mean, the Bears own the place.
Doesn't make sense.
Right. Who the hell's going to buy Bengals season tickets up there? Probably not very many. So they'll work it out. I don't know how, but they'll work it out. But it's funny to every week you're hearing this stuff, and it's politicians fighting with billionaires. Where have I heard that before?
I hear you. I had some things I wanted to get to if we had time in regards to the NFL draft upcoming, but maybe we'll get to those conversations next week. That said, FC Cincinnati, what you got?
Hey, a win Saturday.
There you go.
Looking better. Head coach was very pleased with that. They were missing a bunch of guys, and were able to muck their way to a 1-0 win and beating New England, and they have DC coming up. So, yeah, the coach sounded more than pleased and feels like they're back on the right track. We'll see, but it's all bunched up, man. A lot of pretty good teams in that Eastern Conference, so they're doing all right.
Well, it's an early season thus far.
I don't know how they played that. I would not have gone out. Kudos to the fans for showing up on that night. It was miserable.
Yeah.
The players out there, I don't know. I guess when you're young, you can do that. I probably did stuff that stupid too.
And then anything going on with high school sports, George?
Baseball just getting underway, but I'll tell you what, impressive week for your Moeller Crusaders. I think they're probably heads above the rest in this area in baseball. That's a machine. It's a machine. They are loaded. I mean, they have sophomores and juniors who are Division I players for sure and may be drafted who don't even start. So
a buddy of mine was telling me that there's 3 dudes for Moeller that can throw 100.
That's just insane.
I don't know if there's truth to that or not, but it's crazy if that's true.
Yeah, and St. X is supposed to be a very good team, and they run rule them. That's how good Moeller is right now. I know. It's insane. And They run ruled them, and
Oh my
that's a
goodness.
good team and a good program, and they are so
Nuts.
loaded. I don't understand, you know. Well, I guess I do because they do put a lot into it. They have a great program, and it's like a magnet for the best baseball players. But how do you keep getting better and better when you have people like Larkin and the Bells and Junior and players like that in your program history? And it goes on and on and on. I mean, the list of major league players is incredible, and it seems like they just keep getting better.
That's how you keep getting better, George, is you have guys like that keep coming back to the program and
Yeah,
giving back to the program and helping the program continue down that path.
yeah,
So
that's one healthy baseball program, and they had such great continuity too with Mike Cameron there all those years. Then Tim Held takes over for him, and Tim's still there. So it's a machine, and I guarantee you, everyone in baseball in the city at the high school level dislikes them except the people at Moeller because they're just so damn good every year. It's almost unfair.
crazy. Um, Other than that, I don't have anything else unless you do, George. Anything about the flood?
Time to watch the Redlegs, baby. Yeah, I avoided the flood. Here's an update for you. So I've been walking every day, a couple miles or more to get this back surgery and all that behind me, which is coming along fine. The Ludlow football stadium with that brand new, well, 2-year-old, beautiful red AstroTurf, flooded now,
Oh man.
under water. And it is deep, murky, dirty, muddy Ohio River water on there now. I know when they built that, they knew it was in a floodplain and they had to put some special stuff under it in case this happened. So hopefully it'll all be all right. And I'm sure they're going to have to do a massive cleanup. But, I thought the river was supposed to crest. Was it cresting tomorrow? Now I think I confused my days. I thought it was going to crest yesterday, but it was higher today down
I don't know. I know that at least out here, we're expecting more rain this week. So I hear it's not supposed to affect anything, but I'm holding my breath.
there. Yeah, the baseball field that the Reds redid, that what's that called? Limker Field, um, or Limker Stadium or something at St. Elizabeth Field. Anyway, it's probably 2/3 under, maybe half under. And they have like an AstroTurf infield with the cutouts and
Yeah.
really cool high school stadium. I mean, it's a sweet place, but it's half flooded too, so it's had an effect. And God, I wonder when they'll be able to. I mean, just right before this happened, there were games going on. I'm walking by, and they're playing games or practicing, and now the damn thing's almost all underwater.
Well, I'm hoping that the floodwaters that have reached Paycor are not going to affect the stadium, and they're asking the county for those repairs as well. So
Oh my
we'll
God!
see.
And they would.
I know they would. In any case, that's going to wrap it up here for us on George in the Jungle. We'll be back here next week at 9 p.m. to do this thing all over again. Thanks, as always, to Remington Tavern. They can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Check them out on Instagram at RemyTavCincy or follow them on Facebook. Thanks to all of you who joined us live here on the show and in the chat. We will be back, though, as I said, next Tuesday, 9 p.m. to discuss all of your Cincinnati sports.
Thank you, Aaron.